Listen closely. The Stoics warned us about this long before social media, long before constant updates and public approval became normal. They taught that real strength is built in silence, that character grows when you stop needing the world to clap for every step you take. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that the work matters more than the words, that becoming is more important than being seen. Yet here we are, explaining our lives to people who don't carry our dreams, giving away our inner fire for a few seconds of validation, and wondering why our momentum keeps dying. What if the reason you feel stuck isn't because you lack discipline, but because you keep spending your energy trying to be understood? If you're here because you're tired of over-explaining, tired of leaking your focus into conversations that don't move your life forward, then stay with me. This isn't about becoming cold or distant. This is about learning the Stoic art of protecting your inner world, choosing silence over noise, and letting your actions speak when your words no longer serve you. And if you want to walk this path of discipline, clarity, and quiet strength with me, consider subscribing, not as a favor to a channel, but as a small promise to yourself that you're committed to becoming stronger in the ways that actually matter. Lesson 1. Your life is not for public consumption. Even supportive. But over time, you start. Even supportive. But over time, you start to notice something feels off. You feel lighter for a moment, and then you feel oddly exposed. Your mind starts replaying what you said, wondering how it sounded, what they thought, and whether you should have shared that much. That's the moment you realize you didn't just share information, you shared your energy. And energy doesn't come back the same way once you hand it out. The Stoics were big on guarding what happens inside your mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." When you explain your life to everyone, you're slowly giving that power away. You're letting outside reactions shape how you feel about your own path. A raised eyebrow can shake your confidence. A careless comment can plant doubt. Even praise can trap you, because then you start chasing that same reaction again. Without realizing it, your life starts to feel like a performance instead of a personal journey. Think about how many times you've shared a plan and immediately felt the need to defend it. You start adding details, you justify your choices, you explain your reasons, you try to make your direction make sense to someone who isn't even walking your path. That's when your inner compass gets quiet. You stop listening to yourself and start listening to imagined judgments. Epictetus warned that we suffer not because of things themselves, but because of how we interpret them. When you open your plans to too many opinions, you invite interpretations that were never meant to guide your life. There's also a psychological cost to explaining everything. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." When you constantly look outward for understanding, approval, or reassurance, you delay that inner awakening. You stay in dream mode, hoping others will validate the direction you already know you want to take. The more you explain, the more you train your mind to look outward instead of inward. Over time, this weakens your ability to trust yourself. You start second-guessing decisions you once felt clear about. You become easier to sway. Not because you lack intelligence, but because your attention is scattered. Privacy is not secrecy. There's a difference. Secrecy is about hiding out of fear. Privacy is about protecting what's still growing. Seneca believed that a person should live in a way that is honest, but not loud. Some parts of your life need quiet to take root. Imagine planting a seed and digging it up every day to show people that it's growing. It won't grow, it will weaken. Your plans work the same way. They need darkness, patience, and space. When you talk about them too much, you expose them to doubt, comparison, and noise before they're strong enough to stand on their own. You might tell yourself that sharing helps you stay accountable. Sometimes it does, but often it turns into pressure that doesn't help. Now you're not just working toward your goal, You're working toward people's expectations of your goal. That changes the feeling of the work. It adds weight that doesn't belong there. The Stoics believed that the work itself is enough, that doing the right thing consistently is the reward. When you learn to move without needing a reaction, your focus sharpens, you become calmer, your actions become quieter but stronger. Here's something simple you can try. The next time you feel the urge to explain your plans, pause, take a breath. Ask yourself, is this person part of the work, or am I just looking to be seen? If it's about being seen, keep it to yourself. Put that energy into one small action instead. One page written, one workout done, one honest step forward. Over time, this builds a quiet confidence that doesn't depend on anyone's approval. You'll notice you move with more ease, less noise in your head, more trust in your direction. That's the Stoic way of living. Not louder, clearer. Lesson 2. Words lose power when they're given too soon. It starts in a quiet moment. You're feeling inspired. Maybe you just decided to get serious about your health, your business, your craft, or your mindset. There's a spark in your chest, that inner "this is it" feeling, and almost automatically your hand reaches for your phone or you turn to someone close to you and say, "I'm going to do this." The words come out fast, and for a second, it feels good. You feel lighter, seen, recognized. But then something strange happens. The fire that was burning inside you suddenly feels smaller, not gone, but softer, like a candle that just lost some of its heat. The Stoics would have recognized this pattern immediately. They believed that discipline is built through action, not through talk. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That line hits hard because it points to a simple truth. The more energy you spend speaking about who you want to become, the less energy you have to actually become that person. Talking feels productive, but most of the time, it's just a substitute for doing. It's like rehearsing a workout in your head instead of lifting the weight. It sounds close to progress, but it isn't progress. Psychology helps explain why this happens. When you speak your goals out loud, your brain gives you a small reward, almost like you've already taken a step forward. That reward can trick you into feeling accomplished before you've done any real work. Carl Jung once said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." In the same way, knowing your own patterns is the best way to stop sabotaging yourself. If you can see that early talking drains your drive, you can choose a different move. You can choose silence. You can choose action. Think about how many times you've said, "I'm starting Monday," or "I'm about to change my life," or "I've got a big plan coming." How often did those words turn into consistent action? Be honest with yourself. Words are easy. They cost almost nothing. But action is expensive. Action costs time, energy, comfort. And that's why your mind tries to take the cheap reward first. It wants the feeling of progress without the pain of progress. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from mastering your desires, not feeding them. And the desire to be seen, to be acknowledged, to feel validated is one of the strongest traps we fall into. This doesn't mean words are useless. Words can inspire. They can clarify your direction. They can help you commit. But when words come too early, they lose their power. They leak your fuel. Seneca put it simply when he said, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." Preparation is quiet. It happens in private. Nobody claps for preparation. Nobody gives you credit for the early mornings, the boring routines, the small decisions you repeat when no one is watching. But those quiet actions are what create real luck, not announcements, not speeches about what you're going to do someday. Here's a simple shift you can make starting today. When you feel that urge to tell someone your next big plan, pause for 10 seconds. Just 10. In that pause, ask yourself one question. What is one small action I can take right now instead of talking about this? Then do that action. One push-up, one page read, one paragraph written, one email sent. That single step protects your momentum. It keeps your energy inside you, where it belongs, instead of scattering it into the air for approval. There's something powerful about moving quietly, not in a secretive way, in a grounded way. The Stoics didn't hide because they were afraid. They were quiet because they were focused. They knew that your inner fire grows when you guard it. So let your goals breathe in private. Let your discipline grow without witnesses, and when your results finally show up, they won't need an explanation. They'll speak for you. Lesson 3. Attention is a currency. Stop spending it on people who don't pay you back. You've probably had this moment before. You're mid-conversation, talking about your life, your stress, your plans, and halfway through you realize the other person isn't really there with you. They're nodding, maybe checking their phone, maybe waiting for their turn to talk. You finish your sentence, and instead of feeling lighter, you feel oddly empty, a little drained, like you just gave away something real and didn't get anything meaningful back. That feeling isn't in your head. It's a signal. Your attention just left your body and went somewhere it didn't belong. The Stoics believed that what you give your mind to is what shapes your life. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." When you constantly want to be heard, understood, or validated by others, you make your attention dependent on them. You start spending your mental energy like loose change. A little here, a little there. Conversations that don't build you. Explanations that don't move you forward. Emotional labor for people who won't carry your weight when things get heavy. Over time, you wonder why you feel tired, even on days when you didn't do much. It's because your attention has been leaking all day. Think of your attention like money in your wallet. Every time you open up to someone who doesn't really care, you're handing them a bill. Every time you explain your plans to someone who doesn't support your growth, you're paying for their opinion. And most of the time, the return is zero. The Stoics were ruthless about this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When you let other people decide where your attention goes, you give up that power. You stop choosing your inner world. You let it be shaped by noise. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." A lot of people think their exhaustion is just life being hard, but often it's unconscious spending of attention. You don't notice how many small moments you give away. You don't notice how often you replay conversations in your head. You don't notice how many times you open yourself emotionally to people who are not equipped to hold that weight. And then one day, you wake up feeling heavy for no clear reason. It feels like fate, but it's really habit. This is why Stoicism teaches restraint, not because emotions are bad, but because attention is precious. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Replace time with attention, and the truth hits even harder. You can spend hours talking, scrolling, explaining, reacting, and at the end of the day, feel like you built nothing. You didn't move your life forward. You just paid your energy into places that gave you no return. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you human, but it does mean you have a choice. Here's the simple practice. Before you share something personal, pause for 1 second. Ask yourself, is this person aligned with my growth, or am I just trying to feel seen? That pause is powerful. It brings your attention back to you. You don't need to cut people off. You don't need to become cold. You just need to become selective. There's a big difference between connection and consumption. Some people connect with your energy, and help you grow. Others consume your energy and leave you empty. The Stoics didn't chase being understood by everyone. They focused on living well, quietly, intentionally. Carl Jung also said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." You can't become who you truly are if your attention is scattered across people who don't respect your path. Your focus is the soil where your future grows. If you keep giving that soil to anyone who asks for a piece, your own roots never go deep. Protecting your attention isn't selfish. It's disciplined. It's choosing to invest in the parts of your life that actually grow when you feed them: your goals, your health, your inner peace. So the next time you feel that urge to explain everything, to open up to someone who hasn't earned that access, remember this: your attention is currency. Spend it like someone who respects their future. Choose conversations that build you. Choose silence when noise offers nothing back. Choose to place your focus where it grows stronger, not where it disappears. This is Stoic discipline in real life. Quiet, simple, powerful. Lesson 4. Respect your boundaries. No one deserves everything. There's a moment that happens to almost everyone, and it's subtle but powerful. You're in a conversation, and you feel that pressure to explain yourself. Why you're doing what you're doing. Why you changed your routine. Why you said no. Why you're moving differently now, and before you even realize it, you're giving a full story to someone who didn't really earn it. You walk away from that conversation feeling lighter for a second, and then strangely smaller, like you just handed over a piece of your calm for free. That feeling is your inner compass telling you something important. Not every door in your life needs to be open. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that peace comes from knowing what is in your control and what is not. Your choices are in your control. Your boundaries are in your control. Other people's reactions are not. Epictetus put it simply when he said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, you don't have to explain yourself just to look good in someone else's eyes. You don't need to clear your name in every room. When you stop trying to manage how others see you, you gain something far more valuable: freedom. Freedom to move at your own pace. Freedom to grow quietly. Freedom to change without asking for permission. A lot of us confuse kindness with overexposure. We think that being open means telling everyone everything, but real kindness includes being kind to yourself. Real honesty includes being honest about what deserves protection. Your goals, your healing, your struggles. These things are fragile in their early stages. When you expose them too early, they become vulnerable to opinions, doubts, and expectations that don't belong to you. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." You don't need to mirror the noise of the world. You can choose calm. You can choose restraint. You can choose to move with quiet strength even when the world expects a full explanation. Psychology backs this up too. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." When you're still learning to accept who you're becoming, outside voices can shake you. That's why boundaries matter. They give you space to become without interference. They protect your inner work from being interrupted by people who may not understand your process. And that's okay. Not everyone needs to understand your journey. Some people are meant to see the results, not the messy middle. There's also something powerful about saying less. When you stop explaining every move, people start paying attention to your actions instead of your words, and actions carry more weight. The Stoics believed in living your values, not announcing them. Seneca wrote, "No person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't have." You don't need everyone's approval to move forward. You don't need every conversation to turn into a justification of your life. When you let go of the need to be understood by everyone, you create room to understand yourself more clearly. Here's where this becomes practical. Next time someone asks you a question that feels intrusive, pause. You don't have to react. You can choose a simple, calm response. Something like, "I'm keeping that private right now," or "I'm working through that on my own." You don't owe a detailed story. You don't owe emotional labor. This isn't about pushing people away. It's about choosing who gets closer. Think of your inner world like a garden. You don't let everyone walk through it. You choose who gets the gate key. And the more carefully you choose, the healthier that garden becomes. As you practice this, you might feel uncomfortable at first. Silence can feel awkward when you're used to over-explaining. But that discomfort is part of the training. The Stoics saw self-discipline as a daily practice, not a one-time decision. You are training yourself to respect your own limits. You are teaching your nervous system that you are safe even when you don't justify your existence. Over time, something shifts. You start to feel steadier, more grounded, less pulled by other people's opinions. And that's when you realize that boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you choose when to open. Lesson 5. Your momentum is yours. Protect it like a secret. There's a strange kind of focus that shows up when nobody knows what you're working on. It feels lighter, cleaner, like your mind finally has room to breathe. You wake up, you do the work, and there's no pressure to update anyone, no need to defend your pace, no background noise from other people's opinions. It's just you and the next small step in front of you. That quiet focus isn't accidental. It's fragile, and when you protect it, your progress moves faster than you expect. The Stoics understood this kind of focus deeply. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Concentrate every minute like a Roman on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness." That line hits hard because it reminds us that momentum isn't built by big speeches about what we're going to do. It's built by attention to the small actions we take right now. When you start telling too many people about your plans, your attention shifts away from the work and toward managing reactions. Suddenly, you're not just building your goal, you're managing expectations, opinions, and sometimes even other people's doubts. That's heavy, and heavy things move slowly. Think about how momentum actually feels in real life. It's that moment when you've done something small 2 days in a row, then 3, then a week. You don't want to break the streak. You don't want to lose the rhythm. But when you bring too many people into that early process, you invite interruptions. Someone questions your plan. Someone gives advice you didn't ask for. Someone jokes about you quitting like last time. Even if they mean well, that noise can crack your focus. And once your focus cracks, your momentum leaks out. Carl Jung once said, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct." In simple terms, growth needs space. It needs room to explore, fail, adjust, and try again without feeling watched. When you're constantly explaining what you're building, you shrink that space. You start acting for approval instead of acting from curiosity and commitment. You become careful in the wrong way. Instead of experimenting freely, you begin to perform. And performance is exhausting. It drains the energy that momentum needs to survive. The Stoics were big on this idea of protecting the inner world. Epictetus taught that we should focus on what is within our control and let go of what isn't. Other people's opinions are not in your control. Their reactions, their doubts, their praise, their silence, none of that is yours to manage. But when you open your process too early, you make their reactions part of your mental workload. Now you're carrying things you were never meant to carry. That extra weight slows you down. Protecting your momentum means protecting your attention from unnecessary weight. There's also something powerful about moving without an audience. When nobody is watching, you're more honest with yourself. You can mess up without feeling embarrassed. You can take 2 steps forward and 1 step back without feeling like you failed publicly. Seneca once wrote, We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. A lot of that imagined suffering comes from thinking about how others might judge our mistakes. When you keep your progress private, you remove that imagined courtroom in your head. You're not on trial, you're in training, and training requires patience, not applause. Momentum grows in quiet repetition. It grows when you show up on days you don't feel like it. It grows when you do the boring part without telling a story about it. That's not flashy, it's not exciting to post. But it works. The Stoic idea of discipline isn't about being harsh with yourself. It's about being steady, about choosing to return to the work again and again, even when nobody sees it, especially when nobody sees it. Because that's when you're doing it for the right reasons. Here's a simple way to protect your momentum starting today. Before you share what you're working on, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, will this help me move forward, or am I just looking for reassurance? If it's reassurance, keep it to yourself and do one small action instead. Send one email, do one set, write one paragraph. Small actions keep momentum alive. Talking about actions too early often replaces them. The quiet grind may not feel glamorous, but it builds something real. And when the results finally show up, you won't need to explain them. They'll speak clearly on their own. Lesson 6. Gossip is a system, don't feed it. Sometimes you walk away from a conversation feeling lighter for a second, and then, a few minutes later, you feel oddly heavy, like you gave something away that you didn't mean to. You shared a detail about your plans, a frustration, a private hope, and now it's out there. You can't take it back. That feeling is your intuition whispering that not every thought needs a stage, not every emotion needs an audience. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that your inner world is something to guard, not display. When you offer pieces of your private life too freely, you slowly lose control over how your story is told. Here's the part most people don't realize. Gossip isn't just random chatter. It's a system. Information moves. People pass it on, add their own tone, their own fears, their own judgments. What started as your truth becomes someone else's version of you. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." The moment your private life becomes public talk, you've handed some of that power away. Now your thoughts are no longer just yours. They're being shaped by how others repeat them, interpret them, and react to them. And that can quietly mess with your confidence. Think about how often people share something personal just to feel understood. It's human. We want to feel seen, but the cost is higher than we expect. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." When gossip travels, it often carries irritation, envy, or misunderstanding. Suddenly, you're not being seen for who you are, but for how others feel about you. And that can trap you in old versions of yourself. People remember who you were when you were struggling. They remember your weak moments. Even when you grow, they may still talk about the old you. That can make it harder to step into who you're becoming. The Stoics didn't believe in hiding from the world, but they believed in choosing your audience wisely. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from events, but from our judgments about them. When gossip spreads, it creates judgments that you never agreed to. People decide who you are without ever asking you, and the more you overshare, the more material you give them to build those stories. This doesn't mean you should isolate yourself or never open up. It means you should be selective. Share your struggles with people who can hold them with care. Share your plans with people who want to see you win. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your growth. There's also a psychological side to this. When you talk about your problems to people who can't help you, you often relive the emotion without moving forward. You feel heard for a moment, but nothing changes. Seneca warned that we often suffer more in imagination than in reality. Gossip feeds that imagination. It keeps old pain alive. It keeps stories circulating long after they should have died. Protecting your privacy gives you space to heal without being defined by yesterday's version of yourself. So here's the simple practice. Before you share something personal, pause. Ask yourself, will this help me grow, or am I just feeding the system? If the person you're talking to doesn't support your progress, keep it light. Keep it private. Your life is not public property. Your growth deserves quiet space. When you stop feeding gossip, you stop giving away your power. And when you protect your inner world, you give yourself the freedom to change without carrying the weight of everyone else's stories about you. Lesson 7. People only want the predictable you. Something strange happens the moment you decide to change your life. You wake up earlier, you start eating better, you stop wasting time on things that drain you, and suddenly the people around you start acting different. They ask questions that sound casual but feel heavy. Why are you doing that now? Who told you to change? You're being too serious lately. On the surface, it looks like curiosity. Underneath, it's discomfort. Your growth interrupts the version of you they were used to, and when you shift, it quietly reminds them of what they haven't changed in themselves. The Stoics understood this dynamic deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." When you start living by your values instead of by people's expectations, you naturally become less predictable. The old version of you was easy for others to understand, easy to place in a box, easy to joke with, rely on, or even take advantage of. The new version of you feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar things make people uneasy, so they try to pull you back, not always with bad intentions, but with subtle pressure that sounds like concern. Psychology explains this too. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." When you improve yourself, you become a mirror. Your discipline reflects their procrastination. Your boundaries highlight their lack of boundaries. Your calm exposes their chaos. And instead of looking inward, some people would rather question you. They want the predictable version of you because that version doesn't challenge their comfort. It keeps the relationship familiar and safe for them, even if it keeps you small. This is where many people get stuck. They start defending their growth. They over-explain their choices. They argue their reasons. And slowly, without realizing it, they begin to shape their progress around other people's approval. The Stoics would call this surrendering your inner freedom. Epictetus taught that while we can't control what others think, we can control how we respond. You don't owe anyone a full explanation for becoming healthier, calmer, more focused, or more disciplined. Your life is not a group project. Your growth does not need a committee vote. Here's a practical shift you can make today. When someone questions your change, don't debate. Don't over-explain. Keep it simple. A calm, "This is what I'm focusing on right now," is enough. Let your consistency do the talking. Over time, people adjust to the new you, or they slowly drift away. Both outcomes are information. Seneca once wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. The ones who support your growth will stay. The ones who need you to stay small will feel uncomfortable. That's not your problem to fix." Growth often feels lonely at first, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're stepping out of a pattern that others depended on. The Stoic path is not about pleasing the crowd. It's about building character when no one is clapping. So when people prefer the predictable version of you, take it as a sign you're evolving. Stay steady. Keep walking. The people who are meant to grow with you will recognize your change as strength, not a threat. Lesson 8. Silence is training, not emptiness. Most people don't realize how uncomfortable they are with their own thoughts until everything gets quiet. The phone goes down, the room goes still. There's no one to text, no one to explain yourself to, no one to react to your story, and suddenly the mind starts racing. You feel this urge to speak, to fill the space, to say something just so the silence doesn't get awkward. That discomfort is familiar to almost all of us. We've been trained to treat silence like a problem to fix. But what if that uncomfortable quiet isn't a problem at all? What if it's the doorway to strength you've been avoiding? The Stoics understood that noise weakens the mind. Epictetus taught that freedom begins when you stop being controlled by your impulses, and the urge to talk is one of the strongest impulses we have. When you feel the need to explain yourself, to justify your choices, or to update people on your life, that's not always communication. Sometimes that's insecurity looking for relief. The discipline of silence is not about shutting down or becoming cold. It's about learning to pause, to breathe, to notice the urge without obeying it. That pause is training. It's you proving to yourself that you're in charge of your reactions. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Silence is how you look inside. When you stop filling every gap with words, your inner world gets louder. Your real thoughts show up, your doubts surface, your true desires become clearer. At first, that can feel messy. You might notice fears you were avoiding or questions you didn't want to answer. But this is the work. This is the training ground where self-awareness grows. Without silence, you live on the surface of yourself. With silence, you start to understand what actually drives you. Marcus Aurelius wrote about retreating into the mind as a kind of inner refuge, not to escape the world, but to strengthen yourself before returning to it. When you practice silence, you create that refuge. You stop outsourcing your emotional regulation to other people. You stop using conversation as a way to calm your anxiety. Instead, you learn to sit with your feelings until they settle on their own. That's real power. It's quiet power, the kind that doesn't need to be announced. Psychology backs this up in a modern way. When you constantly talk about your problems, your brain gets stuck in the story of them. You rehearse the same patterns. But when you sit in silence, your nervous system has space to calm down. You start to process instead of perform. Seneca warned that we often suffer more in imagination than in reality, and silence helps you notice when your mind is creating drama that doesn't need to exist. In the quiet, many of your worries lose their grip because you're no longer feeding them with attention. This doesn't mean you never speak. It means you speak with intention. You choose when your words matter. Over time, you'll notice something shift. Your confidence grows because you're not depending on constant feedback. Your decisions feel clearer because they're not shaped by everyone else's opinions. And when you do share something, your words carry more weight. They come from a grounded place, not from a need to be seen. Silence becomes your training ground. Not empty space, but a place where your mind gets stronger, steadier, and harder to shake. Lesson 9. Not everyone deserves to hear your truth. Sometimes the urge to tell someone everything about your life hits you out of nowhere. You're in the middle of making changes, you're feeling something shift inside you, and suddenly you want to open the door and let people see all of it. Your plans, your doubts, your struggles, your dreams. It feels honest, it feels human, but there's a quiet cost to that habit. Not everyone who listens is actually holding your story with care. Some people listen to compare, some listen to judge, some listen out of boredom, and some listen because they want to feel important in your life, not because they truly want you to grow. Once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them that way." Once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." That's not just about being polite. It's about being selective with what you give away. Your inner world is not cheap. your thoughts, your fears, your plans for your future. These are not casual conversation topics for anyone who asks. When you share deeply with people who haven't earned your trust, you don't feel lighter. You often feel drained, like you just handed over something valuable and didn't get much back. There's also a psychological side to this that most people don't realize. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." When you constantly look outward for understanding, approval, or comfort, you stay in a kind of dream state. You shape yourself based on reactions. You soften your truth to keep peace. You change your story so others feel comfortable. Over time, you can lose touch with what you actually want. You stop asking, "Is this right for me?" and start asking, "How will this look to them?" That's a quiet way to drift away from your own path. Stoicism teaches something powerful here. Your peace does not depend on being understood. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "I do my duty, other things trouble me not." In simple terms, your job is to live according to your values, not to convince everyone that your values make sense. When you stop explaining every decision, you free up mental space. You stop rehearsing arguments in your head. You stop feeling the need to defend your direction. You become calmer, more rooted, less reactive. Your life starts to feel like it belongs to you again. This doesn't mean you close yourself off from everyone. That's not strength. That's fear dressed up as independence. The point is discernment. Some people earn access to your inner world because they show up with respect, honesty, and support. They listen without turning your truth into gossip. They challenge you without tearing you down. They care about your growth more than your performance. Those people are rare, and that's okay. Quality beats quantity when it comes to trust. There's a line from Seneca that fits perfectly here. Associate with people who are likely to improve you. When you share your truth with the right people, it strengthens you. When you share it with the wrong ones, it weakens you. So pay attention to how you feel after you open up. Do you feel grounded, or do you feel exposed and uneasy? Your body knows when your boundaries are being crossed. Protecting your inner world is not selfish, it's wise. Your truth is powerful. Not everyone deserves to hold that power in their hands. Lesson 10. Your progress doesn't need witnesses, it needs consistency. Most people don't quit because they're incapable. They quit because they get tired of feeling invisible. You start a new habit, a new goal, a new routine, and at first you're excited. You feel like, this time it's real. But then a few days pass and there's no applause. No one notices. No one asks. And the work starts to feel heavier than it should. That's the moment your mind tries to bargain with you. It whispers, "What's the point if nobody sees it?" The Stoics would call that a test of character. Marcus Aurelius put it clean and sharp. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. If your thoughts keep begging for recognition, your progress will always feel fragile. But if your thoughts are rooted in purpose, you don't need a crowd to stay steady. We live in a world that confuses progress with visibility. If it's not posted, announced, or praised, it feels like it doesn't count. But real growth is quiet. It happens in the boring moments, the early mornings when you don't feel ready, the nights when you'd rather scroll than do the work. This is what Stoicism actually trains. Not hype, but discipline. Not speeches, but follow-through. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's the whole game right there. Decide your values, then act like them, especially when nobody is watching. And psychology lines up with this perfectly. Your brain loves quick rewards. It loves likes, praise, and people saying, "Wow, you're so consistent." But if your consistency depends on praise, it won't last. Carl Jung said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." That hits because it cuts through the fantasy. The future version of you isn't built by motivation, it's built by repetition. Small actions stacked so many times they become identity. The moment you stop needing witnesses, you stop performing. And when you stop performing, you finally have enough energy to keep going. Here's what consistency looks like in real life. It's not dramatic. It's not always pretty. It's showing up even when you're imperfect. It's doing a shorter workout instead of none, writing one paragraph instead of waiting for the perfect mood, taking a 10-minute walk instead of making excuses. That's how momentum is built, quietly, patiently, repeatedly. Seneca said, "If a man knows not which port he sails, no wind is favorable." Consistency becomes your port. It gives your days direction. It turns random effort into a path. So make it simple. Shrink the goal until it's impossible to avoid. One small action today, then the same tomorrow, then again. When people ask what you've been up to, you don't need a speech. You can say, "I'm locked in on my routine." Let your consistency be your statement. Let your results arrive on their own timeline. Because when your progress is real, it doesn't need witnesses. It needs you, showing up again and again and again. You don't need to be seen to become someone powerful. You just need to keep showing up when it's quiet, when it's boring, and when no one is clapping for you. That's where real change is born. If this message spoke to you, don't let the momentum fade. Choose one of the videos on the screen right now and keep training your mind. Thank you for being a part of Psychresto Mind. Keep building, keep evolving.